Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're doing something a little different. We're taking a super fascinating, almost clinical look into the spiritual and psychological framework outlined in the book Unshakable Mind. We're going to examine a concept that's captivated human imagination for millennia, but we're looking at it through a very specific structural lens. We're breaking down the anatomy of what the source text defines as evil spirits.
Now, when you hear the phrase evil spirits, right away your mind probably jumps to, horror movies or those spooky campfire ghost stories we all grew up with. But I want to challenge that traditional worldview right out of the gate. The source text we're analyzing today completely pivots away from the idea of external monsters hiding in the dark. Instead, it presents this incredibly profound internal psychological framework. It actually suggests that these entities are intimately tied to the human mind and our everyday actions.
So, let's establish our baseline definition exactly as the text lays it out. According to the source, an evil spirit is essentially an entity born from humanity's negative thoughts, emotional distortions, and the misuse of personal freedom. And to be perfectly clear here, the text posits that these entities aren't just random demons popping out of a void. They're the direct byproducts of our own negative energy. They're people, or the spiritual remnants of people, who have lived under the heavy influence of malice, greed, or just fundamental misunderstandings.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to look at 1. Origins of evil spirits. 2. Religious spirits. 3. Lustful spirits. 4. Animal spirits. 5. Vengeful spirits. And finally, 6. Protecting your inner light. Section 1. Origins of evil spirits. The price of freedom.
The text makes a really compelling argument here. It explains that human freedom, specifically our freedom of thought and action, is kind of the ultimate catalyst for the dark spiritual realm. It posits this fundamental clash, right? Individual freedom is absolutely crucial for human growth. But when people exercise their freedom in ways that conflict with others, or when they just misuse that freedom entirely, it creates a distortion. Constructive freedom leads to harmony and progress. Misused freedom, on the other hand, generates spiritual friction. And the resulting negative energy from that distortion is exactly what the text defines as evil. So, in a weird way, the existence of evil is framed simply as the price we pay for the gift of autonomy.
Moving on to Section 2. Religious spirits, the trap of selfish salvation.
This first clinical case study is super interesting because it deals with folks who actively sought out spirituality but did so with totally distorted intentions. The source text describes these entities with this exact quote. They pursue happiness in a self-centered, egoistic way, thinking, as long as I am okay, that is enough. The text explains that these spirits are born when people seek salvation through false beliefs and entirely selfish motives. They want all their problems magically solved without having to actually change their own hearts. So they flock to groups or shamans who promise to just pray away their suffering. And because their desire for salvation is purely egoistic, they end up trapped in a self-centered spiritual state after passing, constantly seeking relief but never finding it, simply because they refuse to self-reflect.
Let's move to Section 3 to see how this builds. Lustful spirits, the loss of reason. So this profile shifts from the trap of false belief over to the complete loss of human rationality. And the text provides a really relatable everyday example for this. Imagine someone who's normally level-headed, but after a super long day at work, they go out drinking with colleagues. Slowly, their rational control paralyzes, and they just let base instinct override their judgment. They're out wandering the streets, driven entirely by sensory desire. The source asserts that individuals who consistently stumble like this, who abandon the rational control that literally makes them human in favor of pure instinctual desire, create massive distortions in their mind. And those distortions act like a beacon, attracting lustful spirits who share that exact same wavelength, pulling the person even further down.
Section 4. Animal spirits. Regression to base desires. This category focuses on what happens when human dignity doesn't just slip a little, but entirely regresses to an animalistic state. According to the text, when humans become totally dominated by base desires, they align themselves spiritually with animals. We're talking about a relentless obsession with eating, a mere survival instinct devoid of any higher purpose, or intense, burning jealousy and deep vindictiveness. The text argues that people consumed by these raw, unrefined emotions degrade their spiritual standing so much that they reduce themselves to an energetic level akin to foxes, tanukis, or snakes. It's absolutely wild to think about, but the text points out that in the spiritual realm, which is a world of pure thought, this cruelty can literally manifest into a snake-like form.
What you think shapes your actual appearance there. So if a person's inner mind is exceptionally cruel, vindictive, and relentlessly resentful, they don't just act like a snake. In the spiritual realm, their form literally morphs into a snake-like entity. Their outer appearance becomes an exact reflection of their inner ugliness.
Which brings us to Section 5, Vengeful Spirits, the Weight of a Grudge. Now, these entities are driven almost entirely by the heavy weight of deeply held grudges. And this introduces, honestly, one of the most chilling concepts in the whole text, the living spirit, or ikiryo. The source explains that a person doesn't even need to be dead to create an evil spirit. Let that sink in for a second. If a living person projects intensely strong, continuous feelings of hatred, jealousy, or resentment towards someone else, that negative thought energy physically manifests as an entity. This living grudge can attach to the target, causing them to feel physically exhausted, sluggish, or even sick without any medical explanation. It is literally the weaponization of a bad attitude. Finally, Section 6, Protecting your inner light, the ultimate defense. Okay, so it's not all doom and gloom, I promise. How do we actually deal with this invisible ecosystem? Well, the crucial point is captured perfectly in this universal law highlighted by the text, like attracts like. The whole crux of the philosophy here is that an evil spirit cannot just attach to you randomly. There's no way. They require an invitation. They only attach to us if our own mental distortions, our own anxieties, or our own anger match their wavelength. If your mind is peaceful and bright, they simply cannot interact with you. And honestly, this is a massive paradigm shift. Instead of just looking at these entities as, attackers out to get us, the source suggests looking at them as harsh tutors. If you're suffering from these negative attachments, it's basically a mirror revealing your own mental sickness. The text points out that blaming others for our misfortunes, saying it's my boss's fault or society's fault, is the exact mindset that makes us a magnet for these entities in the first place. So, what's the actual treatment here? How do you build what the author calls an unshakable mind? First up, practice deep self-reflection. Really look inward when things go wrong. Second, absolutely stop blaming others for your misfortune. You gotta take ownership. And third, cultivate and emit a strong inner light. The text emphasizes this beautiful point. You don't fight the darkness directly. You don't try to wrestle with evil spirits. You simply turn up your own inner light by practicing gratitude, positive thinking, and self-responsibility, and the darkness naturally vanishes. We've definitely covered a lot of profound territory today, from the misused freedom that sparks all this negative energy, right through to the specific ways our minds can kind of warp into religious, lustful, animalistic, or vengeful states. But the big takeaway from this source material is one of immense personal power and responsibility. If the spiritual world is truly just a mirror reflecting our inner state, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. What is your mind attracting today? Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer. Keep your inner light shining bright and keep reflecting.